Jeremy Corbyn admitted today he hasn't spoken to Sadiq Khan in weeks. The re-elected leader of the Labour Party says the two haven't had any contact since the Mayor of London described him as a failure in a television interview. Khan said Corbyn had failed to win the trust of the British people, failed to organise an effective team and failed to persuade people to stay in the EU. But despite that, the Labour leader said he's willing to start over with his man at City Hall. He spoke to our political correspondent Simon Harris, who joins me now from the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Simon.
Nina, when Jeremy Corbyn was re-elected leader here on Saturday, Sadiq Khan was nowhere to be seen. But then last month, the London mayor could hardly have been more damning in his assessment of Mr Corbyn's leadership qualities. So when I spoke to Mr Corbyn today, I asked him how his relationship with the mayor was.
Fine. Absolutely fine. He was elected mayor and I'm really delighted he was, and delighted with the way he's trying to push forward policies on housing, on improving our public transport, and he's got the nighttime tube operating.
When did you last speak to him?
A couple of weeks ago.
How often do you talk to him?
We meet from time to time, various Labour Party functions, but I want to, now that the leadership campaign's over, to be setting up a regular contact with him, because it's important to touch base and also learn lessons on how he's dealing with the housing issues in London.
Have you spoken to him since 5 weeks ago he effectively wrote your leadership off as a failure?
No, I haven't. I was disappointed that he intervened in that way, but as I said yesterday, slate clean.
Can you forgive him?
Slate's clean.
Ken Livingstone, old friend and ally of yours, is there a place for him in the Labour Party?
His remarks are, as you know, subject to investigation. His suspension is there until that investigation has been concluded.
Would you like to see him back?
I'd like to see the investigation concluded, then we'll decide. An investigation means just that. Investigate and then make recommendations. I'm not part of the investigation. I won't be making the recommendations. Others will be doing that from a dispassionate position and they'll put a view forward. It's much better that we let them get on with it and await their decision.
We're expecting a very big announcement from the government soon on the third runway at Heathrow. What is Labour Party policy at the moment on that?
Well, we haven't got the government's announcement yet, of course, but as you know, there are differences of opinion within the party and differences of opinion indeed in different parts of the country. In both parties, actually, Conservatives also have many concerns about it. The concerns that are expressed to me, particularly by West London MPs, are the questions of noise, air pollution, environmental effect of the expansion of the third runway.
Do you think Gatwick is the better option?
I think Gatwick is an interesting option, and there's obviously a possibility there. There's also the question of how long either development would take, because Gatwick is at the moment not allowed to develop for some time. The Heathrow development would obviously take a very long time, but I do have concerns about the environmental impact across London, and so we are obviously going to have to discuss it.
But you personally are not a Heathrow fan?
I'm not a Heathrow fan. I never have been. My record is very clear on that. But clearly there is an issue that's got to be discussed and debated in the party. And it's one of the joys of leading the party that you have to have these discussions and have that debate, and we'll come to a conclusion.
OK, Simon, back to his relationship with Sadiq Khan. We should hear from the mayor tomorrow when he takes centre stage at the conference.
Nina, Sadiq Khan has the biggest individual mandate of any elected politician in Britain, and his success and profile has inevitably fueled speculation about his own leadership ambitions. Of course, he's not the first London mayor to turn up at a party conference with that aura around him. So all eyes will be on him tomorrow when he makes a brief 10-minute speech to the conference. He's expected to repeat the appeals we've been hearing all over this place in the last 2 days for unity, saying it's time to move on. What, of course, will be interesting will be to see whether Mr Corbyn joins him on the platform. Will they warmly embrace or shake hands? Tomorrow all will be revealed.
We shall wait and see. Simon Harris, thank you. While Jeremy Corbyn has won his own leadership election not once but twice, Sadiq Khan has gone one further, being elected by the British public to govern. Today, London's mayor had a key message for his boss. Labour needs to win to matter and to make a difference. In a 10-minute speech, he mentioned the word power nearly 40 times, but not once did he mention Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister. Our political correspondent Simon Harris was watching.
They haven't spoken to each other for weeks, possibly months. This polite but brief encounter between Sadiq Khan and Jeremy Corbyn was very public, on stage at the Labour conference. 5 weeks ago, the mayor was openly hostile about the Labour leader. Today, he offered this small olive branch.
After the election this summer, the leadership of our party has now been decided, and I congratulate Jeremy on his clear victory.
The theme of the Mayor's speech was Labour in power and how to achieve it. That word, power, featured almost 40 times in 11 minutes.
It's only when Labour is in power that we get the chance to fix the problems that we care most about.
But only last month, Mr Khan clearly believed power was a distant and impossible dream for Labour, with Mr Corbyn at the helm.
He's failed to organise an effective team. We've seen the EU referendum when he failed to provide the leadership to persuade people to vote to remain in the EU.
5 weeks ago you said Jeremy Corbyn failed to win the trust and respect of the British people. Do you still have that opinion of him?
Well, look, I mean, to be fair to Jeremy and his supporters, he won an election.
But you haven't changed your opinion of him, have you?
What I said in my speech was, we've got to, the reality is that Jeremy's won an election, decisively so.
Is Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister material?
Of course he is.
The Labour leader and London Mayor want us to believe the past is behind them. That's certainly the message from one of Mr Corbyn's closest allies.
Jeremy has said he's wiping the slate clean, he's not going to look back to what people said, he wants to work with everybody to secure a Labour victory in 2020.
It won't be awkward for Sadiq Khan?
No, I can't imagine. It certainly won't be awkward for Jeremy.
Mr Khan also had an emphatic message for anyone wondering about his leadership ambitions. Are you saying you never want to be Prime Minister?
I never want to be Prime Minister. I want to be the Mayor of London for as long as I can.
The current Labour leader and the party's most senior elected politician say they will meet soon.
Simon, a London mayor denying he wants to be Prime Minister. It sounds very familiar.
Nina, it is a familiar narrative, isn't it? You know how it goes, someone gets elected Mayor of London and immediately talked about as a future Prime Minister. After the Boris Johnson years at Conservative conferences, it seems Sadiq Khan has inherited the mantle. And whatever he says about his ambitions, be under no illusion, there was an underlying core message in his speech to delegates today, and it goes like this. There are Labour politicians capable of winning power, and you are looking at one of them. By the way, we also heard from Diane Abbott today on her take on the Corbyn-Khan relationship, and she got a bit of a surprise at the conference. Yes, the conference wished her happy birthday. Tomorrow is Jeremy Corbyn's big day with his big speech to try to unify his fractious party. Nina.
Simon Harris in Liverpool, thank you. Sadiq Khan outlined his new plan for post-Brexit London today, and it involves opting out of controls on immigration. He wants the government to introduce London-only work permits. He claims the capital's economy would struggle without them. But it's far from clear how they would work, whether they're what Londoners want or if his leader supports him. From the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
Labour's re-elected leader was hoping his conference speech would help heal the rifts in his party. Instead, he sparked a new row by appearing to back an open-door policy on immigration.
It isn't migrants that have caused a housing crisis. It's a Tory government that's failed to build homes. A Labour government will not offer false promises on immigration, as the Tories have done. We will not sow division by fanning the flames of fear. We will tackle the real issues of immigration instead.
What angers his opponents is that appears to ignore the millions of people who voted to leave the EU. Mr Corbyn's message might not cause ripples in multicultural inner-city constituencies like his in Islington, but his critics in the party believe it shows he's out of touch with many traditional Labour voters, especially in other parts of the country. Across the UK, migrant workers from Europe make up 5.3% of the workforce. In London, the figure is much higher, 12.5%. And in hotels and restaurants, 32%, almost a third of employees are migrant workers. London's mayor revealed today he's asked the government to allow a post-Brexit system of London-only work permits.
We're working on a system to ensure that we can work with the government to make sure businesses in London can continue to attract the talent, because what we can't afford to happen is the talent goes elsewhere.
At this steak restaurant in the West End, there's a workforce of 100. Just 10 employees are from the UK. The rest are migrants, mostly from the EU.
When we place ads for jobs, so few sort of Indigenous British people turn up for the interview. And that says a lot about the fact that Britons don't necessarily want to work in hot kitchens for long hours, however rewarding it is and however good the remuneration, because it's certainly not a low-paid job.
City Hall said the idea of work permits was at an early stage. It's not yet clear how it would work.
The idea that somehow or other London should have a separate system of work permits and immigration control to the rest of the country is absurd. And of course, London is part of the country. You know, it's not a separate state, just as much as Sadiq Khan might like it to be.
Mr Corbyn also used his speech to try to patch up his relationship with the Mayor, praising his election victory in May.
My congratulations, Sadiq.
It wasn't enough to make him smile, but he did manage a wink. Simon Harris, ITV News, Liverpool.
Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe's reign as Met Police Commissioner came to an abrupt end today. He announced he's retiring in February, aged just 58, 7 months before the end of his contract. He's been widely criticised over his force's handling of historical sexual abuse allegations, but it was the lack of support from new Mayor Sadiq Khan that appears to have brought his time to an end. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
He said he loved his job and wanted to work forever, but a series of controversial investigations and the arrival of a new mayor fueled speculation about his future. And today, Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe announced his retirement as London's police chief.
I just thought it was exactly the right time. New mayor's arrived, and they will want to make their plans over the next 4 years. New Home Secretary, as it happens. And I won't be here for that 4 or 5 year period. We know that for certain.
The announcement of his resignation still came as a surprise. Sir Bernard will stay in his job long enough to oversee Scotland Yard's move from its current headquarters to this building overlooking the Thames. He was expected to be Commissioner for at least another year and was hoping to stay on even longer, but now he'll be gone by February. Sir Bernard was appointed by Mayor Boris Johnson and Home Secretary Theresa May in the aftermath of the summer riots of 2011. His first big job was to stitch together an impenetrable security blanket for the London Olympics. He was responsible for a big increase in the number of police officers with guns, and the force came in for criticism over its handling of historical sex abuse allegations. But veteran City Hall observers believe Sir Bernard's biggest challenge turned out to be the election of Sadiq Khan.
Well, I think Bernard Hogan-Howe is far too professional an officer to actually say what's actually happened, which is that Sadiq Khan has forced him out.
I assumed right from the start that he perhaps wouldn't get on particularly well with our new mayor, given their early clashes.
Did you want him to go?
No, I didn't. We've got a really good working relationship. We work really well together. He's had my confidence, but he's done the job for 5 years. What he's done, which I'm grateful for, is given the Home Secretary and me sufficient notice so we can have a good successor in place when he retires.
Sir Bernard's decision to stand down means the Met is looking for its 4th commissioner in less than 10 years. Simon Harris, ITV News.